Welcome to the Coaching Room IELTS. This is your IELTS listening test for today. There are 4 parts in it, as the recording will not be repeated, so listen carefully, be focused and good luck.
The director of an engineering company is interviewing an applicant for a job.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good morning. It's Mr. Robinson, isn't it? Have a seat. Stephen Robinson.
Yes.
Is that S-T-E-V-E-N or P-H?
It's V.
OK. I've got your letter of application, but I need a few more details for the file. Now, you're from Manchester. What exactly is the address?
Yes, it's Dynevor Gardens. That's D-Y-N-E-V-O-R. Prestwich.
Thanks. And telephone?
Well, it isn't mine, it's the landlord's, but I can be contacted. It's 483-250.
Uh-huh. The landlord lives in, does he?
Well, he has the flat downstairs, and he's a friend of the family anyway.
I see. OK. According to your letter, I imagine you were born in, let me see, 1960?
61.
Right. And the date?
12th of July.
Thank you. And I believe you're married.
No, I'm getting married, but not for a few months.
Oh, sorry. Well, I mean, congratulations. Is it going to be in Manchester?
Well, no, actually. My fiancée's from Wales, so we're getting married in her home village, near Bangor.
Oh, how nice. Now, as you know, when you apply for a post with Williams Engineering, we need to find out a few things about both your academic background and more recent work experience, the latter being especially important in respect of this rather specialised position in the area of water management. First of all, A-levels.
Yes, I've got 3. Geography, maths and physics.
Geography, maths and physics. OK.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
And what about your degree?
I went to Sheffield University and got an engineering degree, with water management as my specialisation.
Uh-huh.
And as for work experience, I started out after graduating in 1986 in China, working for the Chinese government.
Did you work as a volunteer?
No, I did get a nominal salary. It was a 2-year irrigation project.
That sounds fascinating. How did you organise that? You say it wasn't a British company, then?
No. My university had links with a Chinese engineering university, so it was organised at that level.
And after that?
Then I came back, moved to Manchester, and have been working with Latimer Engineering since then.
And what exactly are you doing for Latimer?
Oh, I'm working in irrigation again, this time as a project research assistant.
Great. I've got your details. Now let's move on to a more general discussion about what we're looking for.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
So, Enrique, have you started your research project on cities yet?
I've done a bit of reading around the topic and made a few notes. But, if I'm honest about it, I really haven't done as much as I'd have liked to because I'm finding it a bit difficult.
You don't know how relieved I am to hear you say that. I feel the same way. I think the key is to be able to make valid research questions.
You're probably right about that. Didn't we have some lectures on how to write research questions? I think it was towards the beginning of the term.
Yes, we did. I've got my notes somewhere in this file. I tell you what, why don't we look at the notes together and then try and come up with some research questions? At least that would be a good starting point. Give us some sense of where we're going with this.
Brilliant idea. Let's get started. Okay. From what I remember, a good research question is all about knowing from the outset what it is you're trying to find out.
Yes. And now that I'm looking at my notes again, I see I've written here that it's to do with understanding and evaluation. So, understanding a particular issue and evaluating any problems around it. And of course, a very important part is not overlooking any research that has already been done. Past research is just as important as what is being done now.
It's a bit, I suppose, like looking at the research that's already been done and seeing if it agrees or disagrees with your own ideas.
Sure, I hear what you're saying. But to do that properly, you have to have a clear idea in your head what your own research question is. And by that, I mean specific areas you want to focus on. Let's face it, there's so much information out there, and we can't possibly include it all in 2,000 words.
Don't remind me. The thought of writing 2,000 words at the moment seems like a huge mountain to climb.
I know, but let's try to make a start. I think we're meant to be identifying what makes a successful city, and also try to explain why there has been such a steady population movement of people from rural to urban areas. But I'm a bit confused because I don't think this is meant to be the main focus of our research.
Perhaps that's why the lecturer said we need to write questions, and that must be our starting point.
Okay, well, what we're investigating is more than simply what elements make a city successful, but we're also trying to offer possible explanations. So, we have two questions. Why do people want to move to cities? And why do people choose to live in them?
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Okay then. I think the first issue concerning successful cities must be the economy. People move to cities for better job prospects, and successful cities are cities that have thriving economies.
That's true enough. It does mean that cities can offer good job opportunities, which seems to me to suggest that a city will only be successful if it attracts the right kind of people to work there.
What kind of person are you talking about?
Well, I suppose I'm referring to the skilled labor force. You know, the idea that up-and-coming young people will move to cities, settle there, maybe buy property, and so that city will get the most talented creative minds. But If a city doesn't offer this, then obviously it will lose out, as university leavers will choose elsewhere.
You could be right there. But I also think that when cities encourage businesses to develop, then you obviously have money pouring into the city, which can raise the general standard of living.
So we've definitely got a question worth investigating. But apart from the economic factor, I think another point worth mentioning is the environment.
Sure, we can research areas like the quality of the air, how clean it is, and then there's traffic. Is there too much traffic? How is it controlled? And also the issues of noise pollution and how the city manages its waste. Oh, and I nearly forgot. The environment includes green spaces like parks.
Those are all valid points, but I think you've overlooked the whole issue of beauty.
Beauty? Are you sure? What's beauty got to do with the environment?
Well, don't you think if you were deciding whether or not you would live in a city, your first impressions would be made with your eyes? So, the buildings in a city are really important. If the entire city looks like a concrete jungle, then it's unlikely to make people want to live there, is it? I think successful cities are those which have managed to strike a balance between old buildings and new ones. So, of course, you'd have some buildings reflecting more modern architecture, but others that haven't lost their character and still represent the past.
You're right, actually. I've often thought that buildings tell a story. I mean, you can tell the history of a place by looking at the buildings.
I know exactly what you mean. And let's not forget that the environment includes cultural aspects. So, for example, what's the cultural life like? For me, a successful city will be attractive because it will have lots to offer, like a good nightlife and a wide variety of places to visit in the day, like museums and galleries, places like that.
True, true. My own view is that some cities have an energy about them. They're exciting to be in.
And other cities are the opposite. Well, we've covered so much ground here. But I think there's one final aspect we should research.
What's that then?
The social aspect. Because, let's face it, cities are made up of people.
They are. And surely a successful city would be one where there is a sense of community, a place where people would feel safe and want to raise families in.
This topic is limitless.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear two students discussing a project they have to do as part of a literature course on great books. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Joey. How are you doing? I heard you were sick.
Oh, hi, Olivia. Yeah, I had a virus last week, and I missed a whole pile of lectures, like the first one on the great books in literature. where Dr. Castle gave us all the information about the semester project.
I can give you copies of the handouts. I've got them right here.
That's okay. I already collected the handouts, but I'm not very clear about all the details. I know we each have to choose an individual author. I think I'm going to do Carlos Castaneda. I'm really interested in South American literature.
Have you checked he's on the list that Dr. Castle gave us? We can't just choose anyone.
Yeah, I checked. It's okay. Who did you choose?
Well, I was thinking of choosing Ernest Hemingway, but then I thought, no, I'll do a British author, not an American one. So I chose Emily Bronte.
Okay. And first of all, it says we have to read a biography of our author. I guess it's okay if we just look up information about him on the internet?
No, it's got to be a full-length book. I think the minimum length's 250 pages. There's a list of biographies. Didn't you get that?
Oh, right. I didn't realize we had to stick with that. So, what do we have to do when we've read the biography?
Well, then we have to choose one work by the writer. Again, it's got to be something quite long. We can't just read a short story.
But I guess a collection of short stories would be okay?
Yes, or even a collection of poems, they said. But I think most people are doing novels. I'm going to do Wuthering Heights. I've read it before, but I really want to read it again now I've found out more about the writer.
And then the video. We have to make a short video about our author and about the book. How long has it got to be?
A minute.
What? Like 60 seconds? We got to give all the important information about their life and the book we choose?
Well, you can't do everything. I wrote it down somewhere. Yes, Dr. Castle said we had to find or write a short passage that helps to explain the author's passion for writing, why they're a writer. So we can back this up with reference to important events in the writer's life, if they're relevant. But it's up to us, really. The video's meant to portray the essence of the writer's life and the piece of writing we choose.
So when we read the biography, we have to think about what kind of person our writer is.
Yes, and the historical context and so on. So for my writer, Emily Bronte, the biography gave a really strong impression of the place where she lived and the countryside around.
Right. I'm beginning to get the idea.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Can I check the other requirements with you?
Sure.
The handout said after we'd read the biography, we had to read the work we'd chosen by our author and choose a passage that's typical in some way, that typifies the author's interests and style.
Yes, but at the same time, it has to relate to the biographical extract you choose. There's got to be some sort of theme linking them.
Okay, I'm with you.
And then you have to think about the video.
So are we meant to dramatize the scene we choose?
I guess we could, but there's not a lot of time for that. I think it's more how we can use things like sound effects to create the atmosphere, the feeling we want.
And presumably visuals as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I suppose that's the whole point of making a video. But whatever we use has to be historically in keeping with the author. We can use things like digital image processing to do it all.
So we can use any computer software we want?
Sure. And it's important that we use a range, not just one software program. That's actually one of the things we're assessed on.
Okay.
Oh, and something else that's apparently really important is to keep track of the materials we use and to acknowledge them.
Including stuff we download off the internet, presumably?
Yeah, so our video has to list all the material used with details of the source in a bibliography at the end.
Okay. And you were talking about assessment of the project. Did they give us the criteria? I couldn't find anything on the handout.
Sure. He gave us them in the lecture. Let's see, you get 25% just for getting all the components done. That's both sets of reading and the video. Then the second part is actually how successful we are at getting the essence of the work. They call that content, and that counts for 50%. Then the last 25% is on the video itself, the artistic and technical side.
Great. Well, that sounds a lot of work, but a whole lot better than just handing in a paper. Thanks a lot, Olivia.
You're welcome.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear part of a lecture about the school calendar. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
So, having seen that the 6-term system has passed the test of cost-effectiveness, we can move on to the educational aspects of this arrangement. Firstly, all the terms would be approximately the same length. Instead of terms up to 13 weeks, which we have now, there could be a repeating pattern of 7 weeks of term time plus 2 weeks of vacation. This would be repeated 6 times per year. How does this affect the effectiveness of the educational provision? The most noticeable result would be that the very long summer holiday would be reduced in length. This byproduct of the 6-term system could be beneficial. There's plenty of evidence of huge learning loss by pupils during the summer holidays. By learning loss, we mean the amount that pupils forget or lose during a holiday break. Ashley carried out a number of analyses which showed this conclusively. He investigated 39 studies examining the effects of summer holidays on standardized test scores. His analyses indicated that summer learning loss equaled 2 weeks to 7 weeks of instruction. On average, children's test scores were 3 weeks lower than when they left school in the previous term. He also found differences in the learning loss effect according to subject. The subjects he analysed were reading, writing and maths, and he found that the effect was greatest in maths and reading. Furthermore, although all social groups experienced roughly similar learning loss in the field of maths, the studies found that disadvantaged children showed even greater losses in reading skills. So, the problem of learning loss in traditional schools is clear. However, the results of studies into the 6-term system and learning loss are ambiguous. Marchmont found that pupils in 6-term schools maintained their test scores after the shorter holiday period. This is certainly an improvement on the traditional system where, as we have seen, pupils perform worse after the summer break. Benson, however, found no differences between those in traditional schools and on the 6-term schedule. It would seem reasonable that if long holidays result in learning loss, then shorter holidays should result in less learning loss. So we await the outcome of further studies. Historically, of course, everyone knows the reason for our system of 3 terms per year. In days when agriculture was of much greater importance in our working lives, it was essential that the children helped with the harvest. Later on, this changed, and more people moved into the towns. But then there was a new problem. Before air conditioning, it was very impractical to try to teach children in the summer months. Nowadays, that's no longer a barrier. One way of providing something different is the summer school. Here, there is a completely different kind of educational provision. Cooper and others investigated 93 summer schools and the results they achieved. They all had a positive effect on learning. Most summer schools, of course, have small classes, and class size was shown to have a positive effect. Additionally, summer school children usually benefit from a great deal of parental support, not least because payment of fees is involved, and this, as so often, was shown to produce very good outcomes. Results were most impressive, in maths in general.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
That is the end of the test. Now you have 10 minutes to fairly transfer your answers to the answer sheet. For more tests, hit the like button and subscribe our channel. Thank you.